It is the land of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the birthplace of Jesus. From Genesis to Revelation, Israel is the centerpiece of God's story, a saga that continues to unfold in our daily news. But behind the headlines are the people caught in the crosshairs of some really complex issues. It can be hard to see clearly from the outside, so let's explore my homeland from within. Israel is a land of miracles. For the Jewish people, their very identity is intertwined with the miraculous. When Abraham and Sarah could have no children, God said their descendants would be as plentiful as the stars. When the Jews were surrounded by Pharaoh's army, God parted the Red Sea. And in the shadows of the Holocaust of the Second World War, Israel defied all odds and became a nation again. Today, we look at three modern-day stories that explore Israel's unique connection with miracles.
Actually, the idea started 3,000 years ago between Egypt and Israel, not far away from here, with a miracle Moses did. Unfortunately, he didn't pass on the technology, so we had to invent it 50 years ago from the beginning. Kibbutz Hatzerim is the cradle of drip irrigation worldwide. Simcha Blas, he was a civil service guy working for the government. He had the idea. The miracle tree was growing better than any other tree around. He was planted next to a leaking tube. And this is how the idea came to his mind, that if a leaking tube can create a miracle tree, let's create a leaking. And this is the dripper, or dropper in his words, because he was a German origin engineer. He was working for the government. He couldn't develop his own business. So he tried to interest someone with his idea. We had no industry in the kibbutz. The only kind of industry we had was the carpentry, the wood shop. 5 other kibbutzim told him, don't call us, we'll call you. Because no one believed that a dropper at that time can really irrigate a tree. We have salty land, salty water, and nothing really grows here well. And we were looking for an industry. So when he came with this idea, we said, let's try it. It was crazy at that time to do, but it goes with what we believe. It's agriculture, it's water, it's desert. Let's do it, and this is how it started. 50 years ago, there was no Nerfim. We had to see where do we produce this first dripper. The guys in the carpentry were nice enough to give those crazy guys that wanted to make a dropper a room. And in this room, they were working during the evenings and nights. And during the days, they were going and offering the product. In the beginning, we just offered the product for free. Most of the people didn't want to take it because no one believed in it. With the time, people understood that they adopting drip irrigation, they can not only save water, but get also better yields. And this is why from the very beginning, we develop, along with the product, also the agronomical know-how, how to grow, how to crop with drip irrigation, which is different than any other irrigation method. This is how Nerofim started, by the way. This is 46. They were trying to do agriculture at that time, just flooding. Flooding is still the main technology, which is a bad technology to preserve water. But this is the main technology that works today worldwide. You see all this green around? You may think that we build a kibbutz in an oasis. Everything you see green is planted and irrigated. Nothing will grow unless we do that. 110 countries are using our systems, almost everywhere. Even countries that don't have relations with Israel, they use our systems. We have today 7-point-something billion people living in this world. We will have in less than a generation time another 30% more mouths to feed. Netafim has 19 factories all over the world, 3 in Israel and 16 worldwide. From Australia, China, India. In India we have 2 factories, Turkey, Europe, South Africa, and all the Americas. In the Americas we have today 6 factories. One of them is in the States. I'm living in a kibbutz for more than 40 years, and I still have things that I don't understand, okay? So, the kibbutz is a community, the classical kibbutz, which this is one of the last ones, in which people work together. Whatever they earn goes into a common pocket, and then we share according to the needs. My salary as director of sales for a continent is irrelevant for me because my salary goes to the kibbutz and I get a budget. This is how a kibbutz works. In 2013, we won the Stockholm Water Industry Award. It is the Oscar for the water industry. But we, the veterans in Netafim, believe that one day we will also get the Nobel Prize because growing more with less, helping the people to have more food in this world means peace in the end of the day. I always start my presentations with showing the Nobel Prize medal. Besides the Nobel Prize, I start with Moses because the miracle is taking water out of the rock.
If you look at the Bible, even history books, it seems evident that time and again, the Jewish people are sustained by divine intervention. Even as terrorism threats Israel at virtually all of her borders, Israel survives. Of course, today may not be the parting of the Red Sea. Even still, are the modern military wonders that protect Israel any less miraculous?
The Gazans were nice enough to tell us during the war in 2014 that at 9 o'clock we're going to turn the skies over Tel Aviv into fire. So at 8:45, people will go and put the popcorn in their ovens and take out their lawn chairs and sit down and watch the Sound of Light show. Security risk, it's horrible. You can get killed doing that because the system doesn't always work. 10% of the time it doesn't. You're putting yourself at risk, and people didn't care. The whole terrorist threat was thrown out the window. It was rendered irrelevant. So Iron Dome did that. Iron Dome protects large urban areas from what we call high-volume rocket fire. We had naysayers that said either it couldn't be done because what you're trying to do is technologically too advanced for what you can do, or that there are better ways of doing it. We had had certain success using a laser in another program, and they said, well, you have success, why don't you just continue down that path? They said, why don't you use a cannon because the Americans are out there in the Middle East and they're using a cannon. It's good enough for them, should be good enough for you. We proved that the laser and the cannon had essentially critical faults that would not enable their usage. And we were left with being essentially the only solution that was viable. Technologically difficult, yes, but viable, yes, and that was a driving factor. We realized early on that we would need American assistance, be it financial, and we invited them to come along. The American Army sent a group of scientists over, and they were given a deep dive, and their response was that it was too high risk. And our request for support was denied, and we did it ourselves. Now, when the thing started to work, the United States of America, I mean, completely They supported it to the tune of more than $1.3 billion to date. But when it came to developing the system, not one American dollar went into it. It was 100% Israeli shekels. It was probably the fastest developed system I've ever seen in my life. Similar systems take 3 to 5 times as long. 10 years, 15 years for a system to come up. It took us 3.5 years, and the system was up defending everybody. Like I always say, when your backyard's on fire, then you do things you wouldn't necessarily do, and you work quicker. Many people in the United States of America travel a greater distance to work than is the width of our country. A large percentage of the country lives within 50 kilometers, which is about 30 miles from Gaza or the Lebanese border. So you're talking about 80% of the country's population, which is living in range of rocket fire. And these guys have rockets that are really no great shakes. These rockets don't travel that far. They're technologically dumb, and you can put them together in your basement, and you can terrorize large swaths of our population. You have a city, you have people living in the city, you have people living on the other side of the border who do not like the people living in the city, and they open fire on them with rockets. Now, these rockets have what's called a warhead, which is like a bomb. And a rocket's really a way of taking your warhead from point A to point B. They fire the rockets over, many of them, until Iron Dome came in. We really held hostage. Wherever these things landed, they'd blow up and do whatever damage they did. Kill people, injure people, destroy property. In 2006, they chased 1 million people out of their homes in the north of the country. Iron Dome intercepts these rockets so that they do not land. Their warhead blows up in the air, and the people that are on the ground are free to continue their lives. This thing lives and breathes on computers. And the computers are necessary for the calculation of where the bad guy is going to be, and what's the best way for us to get there to greet it and destroy it. I mean, there's so many people and so many countries that want to share the love with us by throwing rockets with bombs in it. There are bombs that are coming from next door and bombs that are coming from way out in Iran. The problem is that the further you throw one of these things, the harder it is to catch. It's like a baseball. If I'm going to throw a ball from the pitcher's mound, then it's easy for the catcher to catch. But I'm going to throw that ball from the right field corner. I mean, that ball's going to be coming in really, really fast, and I need a good catcher to catch it. Same thing with this. Same thing with missiles. So if I built a system that could take care of the hardest missiles, the ones that are coming from farthest away, that'd be an expensive system, and it would be overkill for all the easy stuff. So what we do in Israel is we split the sky into levels, and the lowest level is Iron Dome. And that takes care of stuff that's coming to about 40 miles out. If you're standing more than 40 miles out and you fire a rocket at us, then our solution, our response will not be with Iron Dome. Our response will be with the next layer up, and that's, where is it? That's David's sling. Iron Dome's mission is not to bring peace. Iron Dome's mission is to protect us against people who want to kill us. It is very mobile. These things don't sit like this. We actually put them in canisters. The canisters sit in 5-packs like a cluster. And you take the cluster of 5, you stick it on the back of a truck and put another and another and another and another, and the truck drives away, goes up to the battery, and they just pick the thing up off of it and drop it on the launcher, and we're all happy. Iron Dome gives the Israeli army the chance to not be forced into doing things the way it was in the summer of 2006, where we simply couldn't stop the rocket fire and we had to start pouring forces into Lebanon. In the most basic way, I hate to sound trite, but Iron Dome saves lives. And it doesn't only save the lives of the people that are being fired at. I mean, that's simple. But understanding that Iron Dome being so effective prevents a response, and that response could be deadly. Israel, in many cases, attacks Gaza only when we've been fired at. And when we're fired at and damage has been done, there is more of a reason to either punitively or preemptively hit the Gazans. And when that happens, way more people die on their side than died on our side. But Iron Dome prevents the necessity of that. Oh, they fired something at us, and you wake up in the morning and you hear that 3 people were killed by rocket fire. Then you think one thing. When you hear that Iron Dome shot down another rocket, well, that's fine. You keep on going. You don't expect a response because there is none. And there is none, then lives are saved on our side, and an order of magnitude more of lives are saved on their side. technologically, we're at the biting edge. And there's a lot of stuff we do here which is really, really cool. We're defending State of Israel, and there's always an understanding that, especially with Iron Dome, you're protecting the homeland. We were going in and out of bomb shelters in the order of 9 times a day. And I'm talking about a large percentage of Israel's population, from Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, or Beersheba, cities that are 5 to 10 miles from Gaza, 9 times a day. Well, we were living a life that was impossible to live. That Damocles sword over our head, it was too precarious. But in certain cases, people got killed, and it was a sense of a loss of security. People felt that they couldn't walk the streets anymore. And it's hard to turn that into dollars and cents and to somehow quantize that, but it's there, it's a feeling, and that feeling has gone away. Israelis are getting used to living under the new reality, and that was rocket fire, and now they're getting used to living under the reality of Iron Dome. Damocles' sword is not leaving. That's just the way we live, and we're going to continue making it possible for Israel to continue to be the most amazing startup nation and a great place to raise your kids that it is. That's my job.
It was a miracle of biblical proportions. In 1948, Israel became a nation. The Jews had a homeland. Of course, at the time, this promised land was not exactly flowing with milk and honey. Much of the territory was sand dunes and swamps, and yet 70 years later, and today Israeli businesses are booming. Their farmland is diverse and fertile. They are leading the world in technological innovation. Israel did not just adapt to survive, they invented and thrived.
Abraham, our father, who was called by God, there was no welcome wagon. Being an immigrant was not a normal thing. Jews from the beginning have always been risk takers. We've always lived with risk. There are people who are waking up today in the morning and all they want to do is destroy us, wipe us off the map. There are people who are arming themselves with nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, but that's all they want to do. That's real risk. But the risk of setting up a company, quitting my job and taking that risk to go build something new, to break rules in science, that's the kind of risk we do all the time. Our Crowd is the world's largest equity crowdfunding platform that allows thousands, tens of thousands of individuals around the world to hook up to the best of technology investments, primarily Israeli companies. I've been a character in the birth of Startup Nation, which is what we call Israel's tech scene. And today there are thousands of startups in Israel that are changing the world that we live in. People who read the Bible understand that our function in this world is to bring the blessing of God into the world. If Israel was a slouch, if we didn't have these great companies, if we weren't changing the world, that would be surprising. Israel's on cancer. Israel's on how to make your web experience better. Israel's on education or concussion avoidance or all of these areas. So many great things that are happening here that are going to help the world. We set up Our Crowd about 3 years ago. We're now over $300 million invested both in the platform and into our company. Recently, we've sold 2 of our companies. One was a company called Replay, which was an immersive 360-degree sports that was sold to Intel, and Crosswise was just bought by Oracle. So we're part of the story where American technology giants are essentially leaning on and sourcing their next innovations from Israel. Microsoft alone bought 5 Israeli companies. Oracle's bought 3 so far this year. When you go home and are proud about American technology, which is a wonderful thing, you have to understand that there is this partnership between America and Israel, where the great innovative advances forward for humankind are really getting done as a partnership of the US and Israel. Business people are doing God's work, in my opinion. We've unfortunately been hit with so much negativity about business and about business people being unethical and tycoons and stealing. And what people don't understand is God wants people to go out and create. It's not a fixed pie, which we simply have to fight over which piece we're going to get. It's about how do we build this pie for all of mankind? How do we build Israel? How do we build the United States? How do we build all the countries, solve hunger? And in doing so, putting people to work, making money, letting investors join you. What a blessing. One of our companies, Taranis. These are young guys who are building a software app, and they found a way by using this big data hookup to smartphone technology to improve yields and performance in the average pear growing plot of land by 10 to 20%. Now you might think, well, what's 10 or 20% in terms of a yield improvement for pears? Well, for the farmer who's living on a 5% or 10% profit margin, that's huge. So we do crowdfunding. Now, most people, when they think of crowdfunding, they think of either a donation to their church or their synagogue. You publish a few words, you put up a short video, and people, believe it or not, out of the goodness of their heart, send money to help you make that dream come true. So we're doing the same thing, but instead of just you getting a good feeling, which you get anyway, we're giving you stock or equity. That's why it's called equity crowdfunding. I'm basically an enabler of innovative and entrepreneurial people to go help them make their dreams come true. They're the ones who do the magic. They're the ones who come up with the new ideas and put the sweat and the 3 or 4 days, sleepless nights, and they take the arrows in their back and the sort of ridicule of, you can't do that, which every great entrepreneur gets plenty of. But my ability to now bring in the crowd who can now see these great ideas and say, you know what, I want to be an enabler too. I want to help this guy create a new way of improving crop yield.
I finished residency first, but in my second and third year,
Israel is a startup nation. It makes it so interesting that we're an old new nation. We're sitting here at the bridge between this incredible past and I think this incredible future. And that's what gives, to my mind, life real meaning. If you don't believe in miracles, you're being irrational. Look at this story of the Jews, and let's say you're a completely secular person who has no real connection to Scripture, to the divine, and that's fine. You tell me that this story of the Jews is a rational story. You tell me this makes a lot of sense. And it wasn't just Pharaoh who was throwing Jewish male babies into the river, or it wasn't just in the Roman destruction of our temple, or it wasn't in the Crusades or the Inquisition where they were torturing Jews for their belief, or it wasn't just the Cossacks chasing my family out and stabbing my grandmother, or it wasn't just the Nazis burning us in the millions. Okay, this has been happening for generations, and now today we have the Iranians who would like to finish the work. But we're here. You got to believe in miracles. And in this country, we have all kinds of technology people, but many of them are people of faith. And many of them, as they are breaking new ground, as they are creating prize-winning technologies that are breaking rules, these are people who believe in miracles, who believe in the fact that man and God are involved in a dialogue in the world. It's a wild ride. When people dream up these ideas, we dreamed up our crowd. We're a startup. We've been at this for 3 years. 3 years ago, there was nothing here. We're now over 100 employees, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. It's such a small nation. We're 15 million worldwide. We're now 8.5 million total residents here living in Israel. That this is a rational story, that this is a story which is easily explained, give me a break. We're not just surviving and hanging on, we're thriving, we're flourishing. We're building this country in a beautiful way and contributing to mankind. We're still at it.
Have you ever doubted God's word? Have you ever wondered if miracles still happen today? Look no further than Israel. Of course, we know the great miracles of the Old Testament. The great exodus from Egypt, the Battle of Jericho, David and Goliath, But the miracles didn't end there. They continue into our modern age. No people group has ever been scattered throughout the world multiple times, suffered so greatly, and yet survived with an intact language in their historic homeland. Ancient Egypt, Persia, Babylon, Rome, and Nazi Germany, they're all gone. Yet Israel and her people survive and thrive. So too, the promises of God. Israel is a nation of miracles, evidence that God still works today. As the Apostle Paul said in Hebrews, "Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful." I leave you with a psalm penned by King David, a blessing over the city, and indeed a prayer for Israel. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. May peace be within your walls, and prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brothers and friends, I will now say, may peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good.
For thousands of years, the Jewish people have been conquered by kings, destroyed by dynasties, murdered by the millions, and yet this small nation still stands. From Egyptian slavery to Nazi prison camps, the Jews have escaped captivity and found their home in the Promised Land. In one day, Gideon defeated the Midianites. In 6 days, Israel was victorious in the Six-Day War. While a young Jewish boy used a sling, this young Jewish nation uses technology to keep giants at bay. In Israel, water springs from impossible places. And God's blessing to Abraham continues to this day. From military victories to agricultural advances and economic breakthroughs, Israel is a land of miracles.